and put our attention on our breath. We are breathe in, breathe out. We let go of any stress, any worry, any concern. And as we let go, we notice a stillness. And we slowly move into that stillness while noticing our breath. It's quiet here. It's peaceful there. And there we meet something. There is an innocent part of us that already knows. A part of us that does not look back. A part of us that cannot be understood by our will of doing. There is a part of us in this stillness that cannot be glimpsed except through giving away and resting in the silence of surrender. Can you be in love with a place that does not care how you look? Let me look out a window that makes me indifferent to mirrors and what my innocence may wear or may clothe itself. Can I fall in love with a place that does not care how I look? And let me see through a window that shows me a new complexion of timeless beauty and a smile of renewed youthfulness. There is a window that shows me a child's laugh. And in that laughter, we are rediscovering a new ground that we may not have seen before or have forgotten. We can see an innocence that is our innocence. And in that innocence, we surrender to the beauty that appears to be always changing with time, only to discover a deeper transparent window that shows me the innocence of myself that never changes. A place behind a window where I do not owe anyone or anyone owes me. An innocence where we have no name in the light of reverence. So let us go into the silence for 3 minutes and look through that window and meet our innocence. Our journey is embracing our innocence that finds us through our humanness. And so let us open our eyes to that idea, to that thought. I have a glass of water here. Can everyone see this? How heavy is this glass of water? I want you to think about that for a moment. Some might say half a pound. Some may say 10 ounces. But I'm trying to get at is that the glass of water, the weight of it does not matter. What matters is how long I hold on to this glass. If I hold this glass for, 20 seconds or a minute, nothing happens and it's all fine. But after 3 hours, my arm and my hand begins to get tired. If I hold this glass for 5 hours, my hands will feel the stress of the weight. In fact, it's starting to feel heavy now. If I hold this glass all day, my arms and hands will hurt. My fingers will become numb, and I will no longer even feel the touch of this glass anymore. And so the weight of the glass has not changed. It's still the same weight. So what's changed? The longer I hold on to this glass, the heavier it becomes. And so this glass is kind of like life. The stress and worries of life are like this glass. And that if I worry or if you worry and think about your worries for a short while, there's no problem. But if the worries and stress and fretting of life go all day long, then into the week and then into the month, you may feel paralyzed with fear. You may become numb and incapable of doing anything. So what do? Oh, just remember to put the glass down. And that feels so much better. And that letting go is the beginning of surrender. And that surrender embraces letting go, but surrender is more. So I want to talk about the moreness of surrender. And I'm going to be weaving in and out of a couple of ideas. So I'm going to start with children. Children always seem to be looking through a window that adults no longer see through. Have you ever noticed that? That when we were young children, did you ever think that adults had some kind of amnesia? Where the adult world was a world of forgetting how to play? We forgot joy, where everything became suddenly stressful and very serious. Young children could see the magic of possibilities, and they can see the miracles in everything. They can feel their bodies and freely feel their feelings. They breathe in full breaths. Young children have not yet learned to close their eyes to a window. Instead, they play on solid ground because they speak from the heart. So how do we restore the spontaneous qualities from our childhood? Part of my answer is through surrendering. And surrendering to the page that I am on right now in my life. I find that the world is an imperfect world. And that surrendering to life is teaching me how to be on the page that I am on and see the wonder of it. And this is the page that I'm on in this particular book. But here's my question. Do we fear to love an imperfect world? Do we have fears around loving an imperfect world? If I love in this imperfect world, will my love be thrown away? And me with it? And when I have that fear, those are the times when I forget that love itself transforms what I am experiencing. That love itself transforms my life and my relationships and how I see the world. There's a poet named David Whyte who kind of influenced a lot of this talk. And he says, I wonder if love is a very deep form of attention. That when you love someone or something or are in a loving experience, you give your deepest attention to those moments. And in those moments, we tend to disappear. The worries of the day, the issues of the day disappear, and sometimes the world seems to disappear, and we give our attention, when we give our attention to something we love. The stillness we sense in the meditation, I believe, is God's attention to us. That God loves us so much, He need not say anything. He just gives us His perfect attention, and then it's silent. And when we meditate, we can tap into that silence of His attention and become renewed ourselves, become rejuvenated. Because at some level in us, we know we're being seen with awe. And that awe is also the silence of God. That awe is saying, oh, you are so beautiful. And there is nothing else to say. And so surrender is much more than putting down a glass. Surrender is much more than letting go. Surrendering is open a window to see the magic of our innocence. Surrendering is being with the silence that is magically holding us and all of life. And when we truly surrender, we see with another eye that was never, ever, ever closed. And so to surrender is to set aside who we think we are and who we think the problems are and who we think the problem is, to set it all aside, to let it go, and to embrace the qualities of love so we can experience who we really are. We can experience how God is seeing us in that moment of awe. And then the veil thins. The veil between who you think you are and the reality of how God sees you begins to narrow and become thin. And this is surrender. And there you are, and the child rolls out. And there you are, and the child rolls out. A child that falls in love with the page that he is on or she is on. Or a child that falls in love with this moment of life. No matter what's going on, the moment is fine. A child that falls in love with the ground that he's standing on. When we give our attention to every task, to every moment, to every mountain view, we come in union with God. And like the water, this water is merging with this glass, becoming one with the glass. And when we can see the beauty of that union, we are surrendering to love at that moment. And when I surrender and give my loving attention, I come in union with the glass of this water, and my innocence finds me. When I surrender and see the beauty of everyone here, my innocence finds me. And then rays of insights begin to spontaneously appear. And then we begin to have understandings of things that we've been wrestling for years. Moses in the Bible, he was asked to take off his shoes before the burning bush. And he was asked because the bush said, "You are now standing on holy ground." And when we surrender, do we see through a window, through our hearts, and suddenly realize we've always been standing on holy ground? That the page we are on has always been perfect for you and for me. Jesus taught outside the synagogue because he saw that all the ground was holy as children, when we put our attention where the love is, pretty much as children, we put our attention everywhere because we were remembering that love is everywhere, that joy was everywhere, that fun was everywhere, and we lived mostly undefended. The innocence is not something that is replaced by our experience. That the innocence is not found in the manufactured world. It is not found in structures that we build, the organizations we create. Innocence that we often see in children is not found in this building or this religion called unity, or any other religion. Innocence is not found in beliefs that hold and bind us to our identities or what we think is right or wrong. Surrendering is the ability of our innocence to find us. And that is so important, that when we surrender to the ability, our own ability of our innocence to find us. And when our innocence finds us, we find a new world of possibilities. And the child rolls out from us. We drink the innocence of joy, the innocence of wisdom and meaning. These eternal qualities make life meaningful. But to surrender, we have to let go of something. We don't just have to let go of the glass, not just let go of the worries, but we have to let go of the armor, the protective armor. I don't know about you, but my armor protects me from taking risk so that I can avoid being embarrassed. I don't know about you, but my armor protects me from taking risks so that I don't have to risk being seen unworthy. That my armor protects me from stepping out into the world so that I don't have to make mistakes or see myself fail, or risk disapproving or being disapproved of, or risk being seen wrong. My armor protects me from all those things. And my protective armor protects me from feeling the pain and hurt of such experiences. And so I armor up to get through life unscathed, unwounded, and untouched. But there is a cost. And when I judge another, because I'm armored up, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm swinging my sword and protecting myself with my shield. I'm either attacking or defending because I'm armored up, ready for battle. But letting go of the armor, when we let go of the armor, guess what? I'm going to say something that's been true to my life, that there were times when I was wounded. There were times when I was scathed and when I was hurt when I let go of the armor. But my tears clean the window so that I can see myself with God. And so when I surrender to tears, to the feelings that clean the window, and then I can see the beauty. I can see the beauty of the page that I'm on. I can see the beauty of the ground that I'm standing on. So, when I come out from behind my armor and surrender to the tears, a window reveals itself to me, and guess what? My innocence finds me. My innocence finds me. Does innocence ever hide? Or do we hide behind our armor, and the innocence cannot get to us? Our innocence will never force its way to us, but waits for an opening within our armor. And that when we surrender, that is the opening. Being vulnerable to our feelings, dropping the protective armor. And when we live behind that stifling armor, something is missing. When we are always protecting ourselves, something is missing. And so we look outside ourselves to search for something that is missing. Speaking for myself, when something is missing in my life, I become frustrated, I become angry, and then I become critical of others. I become resentful of the world because something is missing in me. I create a lot of stories of what's wrong because something is missing in me. And then I begin to resent the page that I'm on in life because something is missing in me. Because I'm too afraid to surrender, to drop the armor, and to look what's really going on inside of me. And when I resent the page I am on in life, I cannot see the beauty of the page. When I resent, I cannot see the holiness of the ground that I'm standing on now when I look outside myself. So surrender is dropping the armor and being emotionally naked for all to see, including me to see me. And guess what? My innocence finds me. And that dropping the armor also means being vulnerable to my own self-criticism. See, I protect myself from my own inner stories. But when I become vulnerable, I hear those stories all of a sudden. I see the beliefs that are painful. I see the painful memories that are being called to heal. But when I surrender and become vulnerable to the critical people of my past that were hurtful to me, to those memories, sometimes I can still hear their voices. And when I surrender and bring compassion to those voices, to bring love to those inner stories, my innocence finds me. So surrender is bringing love within myself as well as out of myself. And the tragedy of not surrendering is not being vulnerable. Not being vulnerable. And when I'm not vulnerable, I cannot be touched by my innocence. But when I am vulnerable, my innocence finds me and I am touched by it. And when I surrender to a swing on the playground and joy and freedom finds me, my innocence finds me too. And when I surrender to the wind, carrying the kite, and feel the joy and freedom of being with something greater than myself, my innocence finds me. And I do not confuse the body of a child with the innocence that cannot be hurt. See, my body can be hurt, but this innocence can never be hurt. And I forget that. We forget that sometimes. When we look within ourselves, there are times when our innocence still does not find us. Why is that? I've been doing the inward journey and I still can't find my innocence. It doesn't find me. Why is that? Well, here's my thought on that. That when our heart is blocked by the armor of analysis, by the armor of fixing, by the armor of telling what people we should do, by the armor of diagnosing, of shutting down, of discounting, minimizing, the armor of comparing, of avoiding, of commiserating, of one-upping, of feeling sorry for someone else or yourself, by condemning judgments. These are all forms of armor. The armor of gossip, the armor of blaming. When we experience these, we pick up our armor and we distance ourselves from our heart, from our innocence. There is a guru, Nasagradar, I didn't say that correctly, but he says, the mind creates the abyss and the heart crosses it. And so our feelings point to the innocence. Weeping is our body's way of stopping to resist life and move into the dissolve and resolve of armor, where we can become free and move into the play and dance and sing and breathe full breaths. We surrender to our innocence. And we cannot skip being a human being, because the body itself, being a human being, is a stepping stone to the experience of our innocence. And so that inner journey that we do has to do with being vulnerable to the heart, to drop the armor, and there you are, Drop the shoes and feel the grass under your feet, and there you are. And so loving an imperfect world sometimes hurts. Embrace the hurt, and our innocence finds us. When there is a loss, surrender to what arises, and the innocence of love will know what to do. When there is resentment, surrender, and the innocence of love will know what to do. When there is fear, surrender. When there is grief, surrender, and the innocence of love will know what to do. So our innocence is also our teacher. And when we surrender, that innocence will find us on the other side of loss, of resentment, of fear, of grief, on the other side of the window, and we meet a miracle. The place behind the window where our innocence was never, ever diminished. And it's where you really are. It's who you really are. So in conclusion, surrender is more than letting go. Surrender holds a hidden invitation to our innocence. Surrender is dropping the armor and being vulnerable to the feelings so that we can meet a new freedom and meet an inner teacher who will guide us through. And when we surrender, our innocence finds us and we give the best of ourselves to the world. And when I feel the absence of something and begin looking outside myself, I ask a simple question. Am I missing it? Am I missing it? Am I missing it? Am I missing the beauty of this glass? Am I missing the beauty of the page that I am on? Am I missing the beauty of the ground that I am standing on? Am I missing it? And then when I let go of the heaviness, I surrender to the beauty of the glass. I surrender to my feelings and all that I thought was real. And I come into this moment of stillness, naked, vulnerable, armorless, feeling it all. And my innocence finds me. And I say yes. And I drink it. I drink life. And it tastes good. So the mics are open.
Well, I was moved by your talking today, and I liked the analogy of little children, because I don't necessarily feel that stillness when I'm meditating, and I wish I could. I've been trying for 40 years to do that. But I have noticed that times when my brain is in automatic, like hanging up clothes or washing dishes or doing some simple task that entertains my conscious mind, sometimes little messages come through. And they're often answers to questions I put out at another time. But when I get in that place where I quit talking, the little voice in my head quits, then I get those kind of messages. And I can always tell they're right when they're loving. If they're anything else, then I know they're not from my innocent self, if you will. And so I like being reminded of that. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. And when I heard that, when you're in the zone, when you're giving your attention to something, it seems to me that you are loving a little bit of what you're doing, that you're at peace with it, and then the insights come. And that so much grabs what I'm trying to say today, that when we give our attention, that attention is love too.
Thinking about the terms of armor, what do we as adults do when we armor ourselves? And the thought came is that part of armor is the different faces and masks that we put on as we're growing up, like if we're picked on, we develop, put on a mask of a tough person. I'm not going to take it anymore. Or a mask that I know it all. I'm not going to be caught stupid again. And so I went back when I was a little boy, about 3 or 4. I used to go outside in a small yard and play for hours by myself and be entertained by watching a spider web, going in the little garden, looking at all the plants and wondering how they came from the ground as a seed and into a plant, and then playing with mud, and I made little cities with little toys in the sandbox. And I was thinking, there is, when you go into that world of a little kid, I remember that song Toyland that said, when we leave Toyland's boundaries and grow up, we'll never return again. And I was thinking, this is all part of armoring and putting on masks and growing up. And thought is, as an adult, the chore is to now and then reverse the process and saying, if I take these masks off, who is that in here that's really me? How do I know I don't have a mask on?
Very good, very good. When you spoke, it reminded me of when I was a child. Sometimes I would get hurt, and I would armor up, and I would say, oh, this doesn't hurt me. Oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine. But years and years of doing that, I became numb. I became numb to my own feelings, to other people. I had very little awareness of what other people's needs and wanted. And so when I began to drop my armor and say, wait a minute, it did hurt, or someone says something now that hurts, wait a minute, that hurts. In fact, I was talking to Pat a while ago about some of the same thing, that thank God I have the ability to drop at least some of my armor and be vulnerable to that pain and say, I'm hurt. And every time I do, I feel better. I feel freer. But when I don't say it and armor up, I shrink, I withdraw. And so that surrendering of the armor, surrendering to the pain, is actually where we meet our humanity, but it's also where we meet our divinity.